Hello, everyone. I'm Daniel. Welcome to my vinyl corner. We are here with Keith, who is a very good buddy of mine and always hears about it when I, get different vinyl finds. So today we've essentially decided to, present and talk through some of the vinyl finds that I have come across, and for both of us to share updates.
Yes, that sounds good. I think we're looking at a review of vinyl finds for the month of November, So
November,
I
and I
think
think into early December as well. There are even a few now of these releases that are
some
coming.
recent finds, very lovely.
Very recent, yes.
Well, I guess we can jump in.
In terms of the vinyl, I have put them in chronological order, so we can sort of talk through everything in the order that I found it, and incorporate some context. I was in Lancaster, PA, the jewel of Lancaster County, as Keith will call it, and had been on the search for some records there, as that was a part of the state of Pennsylvania where I had not mined any vinyl from their stores or shows. So went down there. So I've been looking for Phases and Stages for a while, and I had really wanted the first Monarch pressing that record, just because Monarch, as a pressing plant, had a very good reputation for those early Atlantic records. Unfortunately, the first Monarch press of this album, if you look on Discogs or really any of the incredibly inflated prices online, is going to run you $75 and up for a very good plus or better copy. I had found a copy of Phases and Stages, which looked to be still in the shrink, and I've kept it in the shrink wrap and opened it on the original Atlantic label of the Times, and it has a serial. When I remove the record from the shrink, it says MO. That's consistent with Monarch, and so it turns out that I had actually found a sealed original Monarch US press of Willie Nelson Phases and Stages for a song over in Lancaster, a record that in the immediate Philadelphia area you would never find. Bloody Mary Morning, of course, one of the big hit songs here, has been performed in Austin, Texas, and in many different occasions by Willie Nelson, and my very favorite song to listen to when going on a flight, as one occasionally does more and more often now.
That's very fun. That seems like you mentioned that it's very hard to find in the Philadelphia area. Now, this might be a bit of a digression, but what have you gathered about the vinyl scene around Lancaster that differs from the more closer Philly suburbs?
I can, from what I could tell, there was more alternative rock. There was more metal in terms of the new vinyl. There was also maybe slightly less jazz, but you could still get the Blue Notes and Blue Note classics or any of the new releases. And there's more country music, like older country albums like this. They're swimming in, because 2 weeks later I was at a record show that was also in Lancaster County, and I saw another copy that was a first press of this. I don't know if it's a Monarch, and it was in the identical condition to this one, where instead of finding it sealed, somebody had already opened that shrink wrap and had essentially this brand new vinyl, stitched in time to the present day. So I think they're absolutely swimming in country there. And I've only heard, I've never been to the Pacific Northwest, but I've only heard that over in the Pacific Northwest, they eat, live, and breathe punk music, and they're swimming in punk records that you could never find here. So it really is a very regional thing.
That's very fair. You said that this record was sealed, original seal? Like
Yeah,
never been
so
opened?
this is the original shrink that the record was in. I just broke it because the sealed record is of no use to me in and of itself.
Oh,
But
naturally.
I mean, even just the sheen on the record, that it had the Atlantic Group sleeve in there, which actually was folded a little bit out of the shrink, and you can see the vinyl. It has glimmer. It looks like virgin vinyl, and even the way the label is printed on there. I mean, there's not a thing wrong. There's not a single sign of wear or tear. And that to me was an absolute personal grail, an absolute great find, and it was as if I had spoken it into existence, because it was the very pressing that I was looking for, sealed. It has been dropped there.
Well, it looks like a very fine record. I take it plays very well as well.
Yes, I mean, I think right? That's typically what you hear, is that with these earlier copies, uh, presuming, right, that the album is well recorded, the quality of the pressing and vinyl were good, and everything checks out, you are going to hear things from the tape and what was captured in that recording session, or those recording sessions, that you would not hear on a record that may be pressed from the original tape sometime later, because there is deterioration of the tape, or possibly a copy of the tape had to be used, as with, you know, Mobile Fidelity Highway 61, or the Love Supreme that they recently did with a UK tape copy. So this, I mean, you were hearing whatever was originally on the tape in its full granularity.
Very nice. A fine first find. And
Yes, definitely a great one to kick things off. Maybe I can briefly say that when I was down there, I did find two other records at the various stores in town. At the very same one, you know, growing up, my dad always listened to a lot of U2, and Bowie, or the early stuff from U2 were always some of my favorite albums. That was really my introduction to rock music, you know, growing up. And this is Bowie. This is a Record Store Day Black Friday edition from a year ago. So we haven't even gotten to this year's Black Friday releases, right? But this one from a year ago, on white vinyl, and they've done a real nice job with the pressing. I believe, I take it's mastered from a digital source, but I think they've really done justice to the album for this 40th anniversary edition that did come out. I do wish that it were a gatefold, but this one I bought more on a whim. I'm really not too familiar with whether the album was initially released on gatefold or anything like that. In any case, extremely cool listen. You know, Into the Heart, probably best song on the album, if not one of the best songs they did. And I think very characteristic of their early catalog as a band that's going between alternative rock and is influenced by British rock, but also came from a Christian background as a band and an Irish background, and is kind of being pulled in several directions, you know, as they make their way toward mainstream success. And this album for me is you know, a watershed point in their discography.
Now, you said it was a digital recording?
Yeah, I think this here is probably pressed from a digital file, right? In general, if they don't advertise, it's safe to assume it's digital, and we can look at the run out and see. You know, you have some notes here, so it comes with a poster actually as well. You'll have a poster of the album cover, which you could unfold. Gorgeous poster, nice you know, anti-static lined sleeve, and you get a card with the lyrics in case you were just getting into U2, or maybe you hadn't heard the album in a while. You know, sometimes these white vinyl pressings can be noisy, but it looks like in the run out, I'm seeing SS.
I know your collection, you usually you favor the analog recordings, and U2 exists in that period where, you know, digital is definitely the premier form of recording.
Digitally recorded sessions became more common, and it is, I think, you know, that original analog sound for some albums, it really does justice to the way they sound. But in the end, right, as you say, the ultimate litmus has to be how the album sounds, because ultimately what you're paying for is the end experience of having a good record. And to an extent, the way that they arrive at that end experience is not relevant. I think, as long as you have full transparency into the process. Now, with that being said, much of the time, the releases that get the best mastering, where they get Kevin Gray or Ryan K. Smith to master the thing, they're cutting from an analog tape, and it's very much about they say, you know, thinking about the sound and having an artistic touch, whereas you know, in a digital mastering process, it's more about looking at a waveform and EQing it based on how the waveform should look. So I from my layman's understanding is that it's much more analytical to do it digitally, but you know, they're going to follow the dollar, and they know that for the all analog releases, those usually coincide with the so-called audiophile grade releases, and that's where the best mastering is being done. For instance, this was the final record that I had found down there in Lancaster, because I've been collecting all the titles in the classic series, and I hadn't picked up this Ready for Freddie. They had one sealed copy down there, of course, so I got that. This is a great album. I think following was this before or after Open Sesame? I don't know, but this is he's really taking on his own sound. He sounds very organized. Wayne Shorter, I think more than he usually does, is very adaptable on this session. You can still tell it's Wayne Shorter, but he is trying to play in that organized style of Freddie Hubbard, and maybe not being as flamboyant as usual. You have Elvin Jones on the drums, who's the John Coltrane's drummer, is just burning, and McCoy Tyner as well, who worked with John Coltrane. So you're looking at basically a legendary lineup of musicians, maybe not at their most musically mature, but nonetheless takes a rightful place in the classic series and in the collection.
Very nice. So where did your travels take you next?
Well, I had picked up during the month of October. I had never really listened to the Smiths before. Having heard Queen is Dead, from a more mature point of view, you come to understand, at least in my view, that it is a masterpiece. The lyricism and the songwriting, the vocals, I think, are what really elevate the music. Morrissey, of course, brings tremendous artistry as a storyteller in kind of crafting these alt-rock ballads. I followed that up with Louder Than Bombs, because I figured I should have that one. It's a double LP. Shoplifters of the World Unite. Just some great songs on there.
Yes.
And so kind of the missing link there was Need Is Murder. I'm still looking for the Smith self-title, and this is an early 2010s press at Optimal. These turned out pretty nice, all these Smith's Warner copies that were released in Europe.
It's a fine album, and I do believe I've listened to that pressing of it.
Definitely a great album, great sounds, and I would say is right there with Louder Than Bombs in terms of the artistic quality of the music. Although this one is, of course, going to be more cohesive, because I think Louder Than Bombs, if I'm not wrong, is just a compilation of sorts. I think I am as much of a fan of this one as Louder Than Bombs.
Oh, very fun, very fun. It's about time you got that into your collection then, eh?
Yes, now the only one that's left is the Smith self-titled. Folks at a record store that I had gone to during a trip to Wilmington, Delaware. I was down at Squeezebox Records there, which, from being at the various shops in Delaware, as far as I can tell, is the premier spot in Wilmington to pick up really any kind of vinyl. I had found this really minty 1975 Winchester pressing on EMI Harvest, US press, of an album that requires no introduction.
None at all. It's a surprise that it took you long enough to get it, as it were.
Yes, well, I had been down at one of the universities at Philadelphia for a vinyl show. The guy had a real beat up copy of Dark Side of the Moon. The record itself looked okay, so I talked to him. I got what I thought was a decent price for this 1975 Winchester. Took it home, and then during the beginning part of Us and Them, where the saxophone is playing, it's a quieter part of the album. Arguably one of the artistic high points of this album. You start to get this horrible crackling, terribly bad, and it,
was the disc damaged?
And it, upon further inspection of the disc, there was no visible sign of wear, but I guess somebody either had a mold problem with the record and had cleaned the record, but the mold had eaten away at the grooves, or the record suffered from some form of groove wear due to being played repeatedly on a system with a misaligned cartridge. So that copy was no good and was essentially unlistenable, unfortunately. I wish there was some way I could have play tested it, and since I got that one, I've been play testing everything I buy. This place you can play test this stuff. And I was looking on Discogs at the prices and said, it's going to be a number of years before I find this 1975 Winchester or anything else. But lo and behold, just a few months later, This one comes along. I get home and I profile it. It's literally the very same thing, and it's
There you go.
Stone mint. This one, and I never heard
gatefold. Yeah.
because I've had the Grundman version, the one that's a digital transfer from an analog master, and for me that album it has the high end, it has the mid end, but it's almost EQ'd like a jazz record to me. It's sort of like the Mobile Fidelity Led Zeppelin 2. There's no like the bass isn't there in the way it should be. It's not aggressive enough, you know. You with this album, like songs like Money, you know, you want to hear all of the bass, and they put a lot of bass on this 33 right here. I mean, Any Color That You Like, that song, I never heard it sound like it did sound in this pressing. So this one, you know, please disagree in the comments, but this is an audiophile quality pressing of this album. They really pulled out the bells and whistles for them in the Capitol mastering studio back in '75. Good old Capitol.
Oh, that's very fun. So do you have other Floyd in your collection?
I do actually, right here. I have a second UK pressing of Metal on EMI Harvest. The EMI Harvest label. And yep, it's in. I had ordered this from Germany. This is one where I did get it on Discogs because I felt it was a really fair price from the guy. And the song that got me into this album actually was Fearless, which is a Rodgers and Hammerstein song, was it not? Then I think, yes, Rodgers and Hammerstein, they're on the label. Great song. I'm still trying to get used to side 2 of this because at times it's a great jam. At other times it contains eerie sounds. This is a kind of album where you can play it if you're doing very intense work, or you can also play it if you're in the dark, you know, you turn the lights out, you've had a beer, and you just kind of sit there and take in the album. And what you actually see here is, you know, do you know what is on the front of this album?
Oh no, I want to say, were they trying to get at some sort of nebula or something like that?
See, for a while I thought it was like some microorganism or something, but if you turn it this way, you'll realize it's an ear hole.
Oh, yeah, I see that, eh?
And so that was a Pink Floyd of the day. This one predates Dark Side of the Moon, but just in terms of the delivery of the songs, the ballads, and the way that they vacillate so effortlessly between the experimental and the folk ballad on this album. You know, it's one that I wouldn't want to play too much because I wouldn't want to wear out, figuratively speaking, the songs on it. You know, I put it right there with Dark Side of the Moon, maybe even above On the Right Day.
Well, that's very fair. It definitely has its own appeal to it. And I agree about the second side. It's very, it's a vibe, man.
Yeah, you got lots of ghost noises or something on there. That's when you play Halloween.
Yeah, that's when
everybody
you
is trick-or-treating, you know, play side B of Metal, give them a good time when they come by. Also from the trip to Wilmington, there were 2 other records. So we had the Beatles Rubber Soul.
Rubber Soul.
Yeah.
One of my favorites.
What do you consider to be the best Beatles, Keith?
Oh, best Beatles. Revolver.
Revolver, very nice. I would say for me, it's this, followed by the White Album, which we have in the 50th anniversary version, and then Let It Be, which is one of the great recent releases with the half-speed mastering from Abbey Road. This one is a Jacksonville pressing from the early 70s, 1971, I think it is. It has the US track list at that time on the Apple label. So some US copies have that Apple label, some don't. Some have Parlophone. And this one has I've Just Seen a Face and It's Only Love, which are songs that prior to this version, I don't know if I've heard much, but you're still getting the heavy hitters, you know, Norwegian Wood, you're getting In My Life, you know, Looking Through You. So
yeah. Yes. There was the Beatles one and only Grammy for best songs on that.
Really?
Yeah, I believe so.
Would it be In My Life?
No, it would be Michelle.
It would be Michelle. Okay. Good to know. This is a new and improved version with full dimensional stereo. So if you want to hear the Grammy winner, you can do it here.
I guess.
And then the final record from that trip to
Oh, another one. Yes, yes.
the Reprise or Warner Reprise Lost Leaders edition of Paranoid Black Sabbath, also from 1975, if I'm not mistaken, on the Warner Burbank label. This is you know, it's not Vertigo, you know, not Vertigo Spaceship or anything, but it's a good sounding copy of the album. Nice clean gatefold. Record plays excellent. And they even had the original sleeve, that Warner Lost Leader sleeve. So, you know, this is a must have. And, you know, Jack the Stripper, Fairies Wear Boots is really where it's at with this album, if you're asking me.
Good choices. Yes, yes.
He's just reporting his empirical knowledge at Fairies Wear Boots. And you better believe it because he saw it with his own two eyes. You know, who can argue with that?
Yeah, can't beat an anecdote. It's the highest form of evidence. It seems like your trip to Wilmington, you picked up several classics and you know, reissues of the classics.
That was an absolute crazy day because some of those albums had been they had been one list albums for me for a while, like The Story About the Dark Side of the Moon or Paranoid. I thought I might not see for a while longer, and lo and behold, the next record that we looked at was David Bowie's Low. That's one which there's a record store that I go to, you know, fairly frequently. I had gotten the original Ziggy Stardust, you know, and I'd gotten more into that album
after some prompting.
Yeah, at your recommendation. And Low was an album that I'd seen there, and the copies were flying, you know, and it's not getting reissued very often. I understand from a friend of ours that he has a Netherlands version of this, which a few years ago was quite difficult to come by from a price perspective. Now with this, this version is pressed at optimal. It's a David Bowie reissue. It's going to be basically an exact copy of the original. I don't know if it's mastered from analog, but it sounds very nice. And you're hearing David Bowie and Brian Eno on this during the period when I think David Bowie was living in Berlin and basically struggling to overcome an addiction to drugs, and that was his low point. Side A is maybe some Bowie that sounds a little experimental. Side B is you know, firmly in the territory of Brian Eno.
Yes, very fair. A fine record.
A fine record, and in terms of quality, it is. I put it right there with those Smiths records that we talked about. They may be digital, I don't know, but the sound is very good. It's pressed at optimal in Germany on 180 gram vinyl. It's just a really, really clean copy of the album.
So that was a loose find that you got close to you. What else what was the next in the series?
The next in the series is sort of my effort to amass the jazz classics as they come out, because you can see here there are a few impulse spines, you know, slowly growing. I had found, you know, sometimes I'm finding them out in the wild because I had the Kulu Say Mama. And you know, the dealer.
Yes.
We got Taweed here from Pharaoh Sanders. You know, that's frequently sampled, the Upper and Lower Egypt. And the B side of this, at the end, he comes in like an elephant, just roaring, you know, on the saxophone. The only thing about this album is maybe he could play more. But you know, I guess he's using the band as a foil, as Miles Davis would say. And then possibly my favorite Coltrane album, Impressions here. This is an early Impulse press on the original Impulse orange label. So that was a big find right there. And the title track, yeah, you were really smoking stuff. I don't know if there's recorded jazz that you can confidently say it's better than the title track. So some interesting Impulse finds, and to add to that are the Acoustic Sounds series, which are coming out. This one was just picked up off the internet, big box style. It's the Mingus album.
Yes. Mingus with 5. Yes.
And you'll see they go all out. This one, if you were to try to get like an Analog Productions 45 RPM or something of this album, really respectable copy, not so long ago, would have been a pretty penny. And now, you know, this you know, Stoughton and the, you know, Chad Casman's people came together and, you know, made this happen, which is great to see. You're really seeing the whole gamut of Ellington. You're seeing things like Better Get It in Your Soul, right?
Mhm.
Which is from Mingus album. So he's covering his own songs in a different format as he becomes a more mature arranger, with that sort of impulse folk jazz sound as well from Black Saint. You got the Mood Indigo, which is a Duke Ellington cover, and he had been with the Duke Ellington for some short time until he started a couple more flagrant arguments and had to depart from the group, Duke Ellington group. Really a great album here, and again showcases just the superiority of Mingus's arrangement abilities, if nothing else.
Very nice. Would you say there was enough Mingus on that record?
Oh, there's more than enough Mingus on that record, because with Mingus, he is the arranger, and he's sort of, taking some of Duke Ellington's more adventurous ideas about composition to kind of their logical extreme. And he is done that on several labels. So anything that he kind of touches in terms of the arrangement, you're going to hear it with Mingus. And I think that's why, although jazz bassists aren't often very successful as frontman, Mingus was able to be that successful frontman because he distinguished himself on the basis of his compositional abilities, even if the bass wasn't shining through on every song.
That's very fair. And I know of the Mingus you have shown me, I have enjoyed.
Yes, Black Saint, which I had picked up in Kansas City.
Yes.
This is one of the top 3 best probably releases this year, regardless of genre. Certainly top 3 in jazz. This to me is on the same level as Kind of Blue, this album.
Yeah.
Just his ingenuity with the composing, his psychologist writes the notes. You're very much the way the sound stage is on this record. It's as if it were a demo or a diagnostic that they were doing in the studio. Like it very much takes on very naturally experimental feeling, not trying to exude something which is not there, but just saying, every day this is what we do. We experiment with music. We put different instruments near different microphones in ways that people don't try, that he goes into in depth here, and we create something that nobody would think to create, but is unmistakably jazz. And that's really what they did on this record. You have Ryan K. Smith out of Nashville and Sterling Sound that's done the mastering, and QRP. I've never gotten a bad vinyl record from QRP that's done the pressing here, and on this beautiful replica of the original Impulse label. So this is the ideal version of this copy to own right now, all attributes considered. I would only say, when opening it, we have a split there where this 200-gram vinyl or whatever starts to break through because it's been mishandled. Now, I don't know if it's Acoustic Sounds or if it's somebody else, but let's go, right? Like I have Trio 64, Bill Evans. Open it, bought it from a local store in the Philadelphia area. Same thing. You're paying 100% of the money for the record, and you want to get and it's one of the most beautiful, jazz releases. They've done a great job with this release in terms of your experience listening to it.
You don't want to get dinged.
It's a new record, it's a new record. It's not a lightly used record. It's not a defective record. It's a new record. You pay 100% of money to get something new.
Did you get anything else in Kansas City?
Yes, I had picked up a few things over there, actually. I will say the vinyl scene there is, again, quite different from what we have here. At that very same record store, and I think it's a great. It's not to knock on the store. I think it's a great store, and they're doing great stuff in that community. That particular store, though, I bought 2 others, which had come out that same day. The Art Blakey Big Beat, right?
Yes.
This has that there, which is the Bobby Timmons composition that I knew. And then, it had another one here on this one on the A side on that original Blue Note label, a Sakina's Vision from Wayne Shorter. Art Blakey, you might hear him go that hard on the drums on the Witch Doctor. Is that what it's called? The Witch Doctor Tone Poet? Yeah, he goes pretty hard, but there's some distortion there. All right. This one, in my opinion, is one of the best tone poets that's come out in terms of music, right? But the recording quality is not quite there, and They've really given it the tone poet treatment, and it's a beautiful one. I love this. This has that virtuosity. It has that excuse me, it has that Art Blakey group that you love to hear. And the mic is better. And all that Sakina's vision. Blakey is tearing it up on the drums for like a minute straight, to the envy of probably many rock drummers. I mean, what a beautiful jacket as well. I think that, that's one where I have not experienced any quality problems with any of these releases. And the Classic series is probably the single best series going on in vinyl right now. The way that they're mastering everything, keeping together. The 6 pieces silver, which a lot of people now are saying actually sounded better than the 45 RPM super expensive versions of this album. And I have no comparator, but this is only mono in the series. This is right when, after Blue Note 1530, the early 1500s, mid 1500s, this is starting to take on the Blue Note sound, combining, this is like an Art Blakey type record, that type of group, but maybe with some more Latin rhythm coming into play. You got Donald Byrd on here, Hank Mobley, who really morphs to any session. He's a chameleon. Horace Silver, of course, the front man on piano, and Virgo was an excellent song on here, and I would say so was Camouflage as well. Really can't go wrong with this record, and a great example of what the so-called audiophile treatment can do even for some of these older recordings. Keeping it in mono is a great decision.
Very fun, very fun.
And also in Kansas City, we had another Pink Floyd find. Animals. I had been looking for
Animals, very cool.
Walk into a half-price books in Westport, and I go over to Pink Floyd P. What is the first thing I pull? Animals. And this is one of the early US pressings of the record. Gatefold copy. The spine is a little beat, but it's in decent shape, and it plays so clean. It plays excellent. Really pleased with this find here. Out of half-price books. Kudos to good old half-price books. We need those in Eastern PA if any of those people are watching this video. I get down there, Also found in Kansas City was something of a rarity at the Mills Record Company in Westport. It had been on their shelf for a year, given the date when the price tag was put on it. So at least a year, maybe, if the price was changed. And that is an album that I had listened to a great many times and never even thought to put on a want list because I never thought I would find it.
Oh.
And it's one of these rare PSYCH titles from the late 60s. It is Mighty Baby.
Mighty Baby, eh?
One of only 2 albums ever on the Head label. This is a US pressing. It was licensed out to Chess Records in the United States. Beautiful, gorgeous gatefold. Gorgeous one. Great one. The psychedelic album. And you'll see, Egyptian Tomb is kind of the famous song on here. Down So Long. That is, to me, almost like the Morning Dew from the Grateful Dead. The way that they do a psychedelic jam, and it's sad but hopeful and great playing to listen to. You have Same Way from the Sun, which it's just very radiant on the guitar. You really hear the rays of sun, just the fuzz on that track. House Without Windows sounds very English. That sounds like an English rock song. So these guys really did some great stuff. We're a little known band, and the out beautiful. I mean, the back of it as well. I love that the illustration on there.
Look at that. I bet you were mighty surprised when you came across that.
It took a little bit to process what was going on, and I'm still kind of in disbelief that I am sitting here with this record today.
We're approaching Black Fridays.
We are starting to approach that point fairly quickly. Some new records that I come across just in Eastern Pennsylvania here. It was a trip out where I had just picked up some new records. So Molchatoma Etaji, which means the floors of a building in Russian, and this great one.
That's fair. Is that what was your quote unquote doomer Russian music?
That is the Russian Duma music. Yeah, that is Duma music for everybody who knows about that. Uh, there's another album of Russian Duma music. It is Mother Teresa, Ma Teresa, and I think the album is called Illusion in English. Um, that's one of the big Duma songs that you'll hear on YouTube, but really the whole album is beautiful. Unfortunately, I think it was only done on CD, but the CD is hard to find, and you'd have to get it shipped from Russia, which is not something that I'm imminently, prioritizing. So that one
Yes.
is just kind of on the back burner. Also from that same trip, I had found 52nd Street, Billy Joel, Columbia / Family Productions.
Fair
Billy
enough.
Joel, interestingly enough, was on Family Productions label, small time label out of New York. And these people basically mastered his record at the wrong speed, about so Cold Spring Harbor, right? At about 110% of what the actual speed was supposed to be. And Billy Joel, beside himself, says, I want out. And so they say, fine, but you still have to pay royalty to Family Productions. And so even once he was on Columbia, until he could purchase the rights to his own back catalog, I'm pretty sure, they had to have the Family Productions Wolf on the label alongside the Columbia. So very, very great playing on this album, and very well recorded. Very well recorded. First US. And that's just as kind of a point of reference, my very favorite Billy Joel, the Cold Spring Harbor. This is the original Family Productions copy here, which is mastered at the 110% speed. So this is like Alvin and the Chipmunks, you know what I mean? That type of thing. Yeah, well, because there's a record show going on there, and that's the Keystone Record Collectors. It was a good time. I'll say I got there later in the day, so it was more just trying to pick up what they had at a low price. I got, and they had this on MoFi, but I decided to pass up on that because I thought it's just a bit of a gimmick. But the album is nice enough. Vanilla Fudge, the psych rock record, original Atco, first US mono copy, VG Plus. This has got some rock opuses on it. They got People Get Ready. They did as a rock opus. They got Ticket to Ride. You got Keep Hanging On. What is it? You Keep Me Hanging On. That one. It's a good psych rock album, and definitely an underrated one. Underrated. Great one. And then you have here the other records I had found. The first US of Blood on the Tracks, which is,
Yes.
a big departure from the modern copies. And you have Nashville Skyline. This is an early US press. Both those records in real clean condition, even if the jackets don't show it. Those are without any need for production.
Some fine finds, and I hope a reasonable price on them as well.
Yeah, as I said, it's later in the day. If you go down there, folks are putting something at a price, and I was sort of asking them a price. Sometimes they were actually coming back to me with a lower price than what I was asking, because again, they're trying to offload things, sort of a community. So glad they were all very, very friendly.
So that's always great going to shows,
Yeah.
They really work with you.
It's much different than a store, that's for sure. And the other one I had found there was a Spellbinder, and the jacket was a bit beat, but you can still read everything in it. And the album, I imagine it is like, it sounds like being in an opium den or something. This is a very and that's a very a very forward thinking approach to some pop songs and jazz standards of the time. And definitely you're talking continental jazz, you're talking Impulse on the same record, it's going to go to an interesting place. And I think this is the main record of Szabo's catalog. And for anybody who's an Impulse listener, I would describe this record as essential listening.
Oh,
The copy is very nice listening. For Black Friday, what I did is I did the Blue Notes, and I did another jazz. There was a Black Friday record store day, Live Evil. That was the one album that was an RSD release that I picked up this 50th anniversary, just because I had heard Miles Davis's other jazz fusion work. I had always seen this being critically acclaimed. I figured, the RSD pressings, again, with the YouTube Boy or with the Chet Bakers, I had a good experience there. It's not typically the kind of thing that I would buy, the colored vinyl and stuff, but we played this.
Yes, I got to hear it the day you bought it.
Yeah, it
It
was
was a very fun listen too of that.
yeah,
Definitely set the mood.
definitely. And I mean, Jack the John Ed on this record is absolutely, just making miracles on the drums. The presence of John McLaughlin is what I'm saying. As a guitarist who did not usually play with the Miles Davis group, added a lot of cohesion to this record, and I think moved it away from experimental jazz and towards a jazz funk or jazz rock arrangement. It's suggested by the cover art, but this is very similar to Abraxas in sound. Then I picked up the Blue Note titles because, again, trying to always stay up to date with the classic series and all that the goings on with that. So
which one did you pick up for this?
there were the 2 jazz funk releases. I don't usually collect Blue Note UA, anything after Alfred Lyon had sold the label. But for the sake of being a completist this once, which I got the jazz funk title, so we got the Places and Spaces, which is very heavily sampled, and this one, which I believe has also been sampled more recently by Currency, rapper out of New Orleans, maybe, in some live shows. So Fancy Dancer, underrated one, bringing the records out from under the radar. This one almost strikes me as them doing what they do with Tone Poets in the classic series itself.
Huh.
Bringing a little known record that's not been reissued a long time to the public eye, putting Kevin Gray on there, his name in the wax, pressing it over at Optimal, in Germany. So I would say for this one, the key track for me is Mestizo Eyes. I absolutely could not resist dance when this comes on. And Donald Byrd, Places and Spaces. This album, I feel this is both Mizell brothers work, but this album I feel is imaginative, right? Even if it's more commercial than what Blue Note was doing before the UA days, it was imaginative, and there is a good artistic value. There's creativity in the rhythm. The Places and Spaces, it seems a bit forced for Donald Byrd. This is the guy who was the trumpeter on One Flight Up and who Miles Davis had ditched in Los Angeles, and now he's doing a jazz funk, and he's on the sleeve of the record. Like this is very commercial. It seems a bit forced. To put this in the classic series, or for them to have released this on UA. But as much as I would have liked them to release other albums, more like Blue Train by John Coltrane, give us Blue Train, give us Adam's Apple of Wayne Shorter, so you don't have to spend $200 on the music matters, or pay through the nose, for this
Perhaps eventually they will get around to it.
I mean, it's not forecasted for now, like in terms of what they said they're going to release, but time will tell. And if nothing else, just we like to see something good. It's a great sounding album. I mean, this is a newer album, and the mastering is tremendous, and it sounds really great on the speakers. I would say of these two, if you had to go with one, go for this Fancy Dancer, because it's a lesser known album. If they have to prioritize which albums they're going to repress, I doubt this is going to be at the top of that prioritization hierarchy. So pick this one up when you still can.
Yes, that's very fair.
Yeah.
So I do hope that you won't stray into picking up the albums you don't care for.
Certainly not with the classic series. I think they said like there are some albums later in the classic series where the jury's still out on whether I would get those. I am not a completist with anything that I collect generally, but at the same time, you do want to have that exposure and be conversant in the catalog. And and take ownership of that knowledge. And part of taking ownership of that knowledge is listening to the music, and having it on a record and sort of putting your money where your mouth is.
Fair enough.
I would say in terms of Blue Note UA, I'm on the final few finds, but right when Lion was selling the label and Wayne Shorter was doing his follow-up album to Adam's Apple, he did another album called Schizophrenia, which is supposed to represent the so-called schizophrenia of the group, or their I don't know why he chose that term, but moving back and forth between an experimental or free jazz style and a more commercial post-bop style. And this is the original first US of Schizophrenia of Wayne Shorter, which I had found. The record was looked a little beat, but the jacket was still in some shrink wrap when I found it, and still completely clean jacket, looks totally new. The album is a bit scuffed in places, but doesn't affect the play. And I would say the title track, Tom Thumb, was a great intro to this album. And it's really exploratory, in nature. Whenever you see James Spaulding in the lineup, that session is going to be a bit more exploratory, a bit more experimental. Joe Chambers killing it on this record. And of course, Herbie Hancock and Ron Carter, in these years, they can do no wrong. So Wayne Shorter.
Yeah.
Beautiful one. Great one. We have Pentangle, Cruel Sister. I heard this record when I was in Kansas City. I sort of had it in the back of my head, and then came back to Philly area and saw a copy for real cheap. So picked that up. It's sort of electric English folk type album done by a US group. You have an 18-minute version of Jack Orion on side B, which is, I guess, was some English folk song, traditional song. And they've turned it into a proper jam, incorporating that electric element. Really unique sounding record, and definitely one that where, a little crate digging through the Reprise catalog has done some good for, my ears. I have the final three. One of these is the Velvet Underground, has to be mastered at the Abbey Road to sort of complete out those big three, the Nico, the White Light, White Heat, and then you got this Beginning to See the Light. For me, that's a key song on this record. Great start to the B-side. And say what you like, I thought, again, the half-speed mastering at Abbey Road, it's not bad. Like, if you listen to this album on streaming and you listen to it on this with the same system, you're going to get a lot more richness and a lot more organic sound of the instrumentals on here. I think where it does have a gap to close against other versions of the album would be the vocal. But I also can understand why it was mastered in the way that it was, because Lou Reed was a bit of a minimalist with the vocal on this particular album.
Yeah, it's very soft spoken on it. How did Murder Mystery sound? Because I find that I oftentimes don't prefer it necessarily to be played just on my speakers. Rather, I like it with a headset, because you get that kind of dual channel.
Oh, because of the voices?
Yeah, because of the voices, yes.
I will say that, like, in terms of the way the mix was split, I did not find it to be too stratified across the channels. And sometimes I did catch myself turning around during Murder Mystery. Maybe the voices were in the room, or somebody was trying to get my attention. And no, in reality, it was just the record. So I thought from a soundstage perspective, they also did a fine job with that release. Again, for me, it was really just the vocal where I think it could have been better. And the last two are box sets. They're box sets.
Ooh.
So we have the George Harrison All Things Must Pass, original US Winchester version of the box set. This was, I guess, previously owned. The previous owner, of course, took very good care of it. So the box is in pretty much perfect shape, and the discs were clean. I mean, there was no scratches or scuffs. The albums are very clean on this particular one. and they sound fantastic. This one cost me less than it would have if I were to buy the 50th anniversary, which I understand has been something of a disappointment. But yeah, probably key track on this whole thing, if you had to choose one, is Apple Scruffs. Apple Scruffs.
Apple Scruffs, yes, yes.
I love that, and there it is on the record. So clean, super clean.
Yeah, look at
I saw this, and I saw the 50th anniversary. Easy. It's easy.
easy
Get
pick,
this.
yeah.
Easy. And that was a
That's a fine release to find.
big fun with the poster. The poster was in perfect shape.
Poster was all right too.
The poster, it's in there, and the poster is in perfect condition. I kid you not. So yeah, I really couldn't have been real happy camper with this very unexpected find. And then we of course had the release from the Grateful Dead, the St. Louis 1971 show. Sugary, maybe the best Sugary. Sugar Magnolia, the way that they're doing the drums and the syncopation, really unique version of that song. The Jack Straw, you can see how they're coming towards the setup of that song in Europe 72. I still think the Live in Paris, the definitive version. Bertha, I mean, a record of a Dead show that starts with Bertha. What does that remind you of? What does that remind you of? Skull and Roses, 1971. So this is a great lineup, legendary lineup. I don't buy every Dead box set. I don't listen to all the Dick's picks or anything like that. But that might be the greatest American rock and roll band right there.
Well, a fine slate of records. You definitely were busy. Lots of traveling to finds and that sort of thing.
Yes, it could be a while before we see a vinyl finds that's quite this high volume, but it's been plenty to ingest and listen to, and always exercise our brains as we learn more about the various records, and
you keep your turntable busy.
Yes,
very fun.
Great. Well, I think that basically concludes our finds and our discussion. So we'll sign off here. Thanks so much, Keith, for joining us. And
well, thank you for having me. It was lovely having you go through all your finds here.
Most certainly.